Thank you all for being here today. My name is Michael Davis, and I serve as the Associate Executive Director for Prevention at Guide here in Gwinnett. And along with the American Heart Association, we're very happy to have you all in attendance today. We would ask that you are muted, but we do want you to have communication with us. So feel free to put something in the chat box. We are monitoring that. And if you yourself have a question for any of our panelists, we'll have a chance for you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A box, hit that and write the question. And we'll either get to it in this session or we'll respond via email to everyone that lets us know they were here today by their attendance. So with that, we are going to get started, and I am so excited about this first welcoming address from the wonderful, amazing, if you met her, you love her, Nicole Henderson. Nicole Henderson was elected our chairwoman of the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners in 2020, making her the first African-American to hold this position. Prior to her election, she was the founding director with the Gwinnett County Community Outreach Program, engaging diverse constituents in the county. After joining the county in 2015, she launched several community-based initiatives, including the Gwinnett 101 Citizens Academy and the Gwinnett Youth Commission. Before her tenure with the county, Nicole served as the Associate Director for the Gwinnett Coalition for Health and Human Services for 8 years. Gwinnett, she has served on boards from the United Way Community Board to the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to the Aurora Theater. She served on the Children's Healthcare Community Board from 2013 to 2020 and chaired the board of the Gwinnett Young Professionals from 2017 to 2019. Nicole is a member of the Rotary Club of Gwinnett County, having held the position of Treasurer and Public Image Chair. Nicole is a 2010 graduate of Leadership Gwinnett. I'm sure she would say best class ever when she gets on. A 2016 graduate of the ARC's Regional Leadership Institute, and a 2016 graduate of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber Cultivating Hispanic Leaders Institute. Nicole was the recipient of the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce Public Service Award in 2017, and Georgia Trend named her one of the state's top 40 under 40 in 2018. In the following year, she received the Trailblazer Award from the 100 Black Men in Metro Atlanta. Nicole earned a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Rhode Island and a master's degree in social work from the University of Georgia. A native of Rhode Island, Nicole moved to Gwinnett County in 2008. She currently resides in Lilburn with her husband and son. You've heard all the wonderful things that she's done and how busy she is. So we are thrilled that she is with us tonight. And so Chairwoman Hendrickson, thank you for being here, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that very warm introduction. I think that was probably one of the best intros I've ever had. And I think I would know a little bit about that since I wrote that intro. But thank you for introducing me. And yes, I am part of the best class ever of Leadership Gwinnett 2010. And I'm really excited today to talk with you all about a very important topic. And I'm very thankful for the invitation to share. I want to thank everyone watching tonight for your interest in discussing how vaping impacts our youth and our community. This isn't the first community dialogue we've had on this topic, and I believe it's important for us to keep the conversation going. It's critical for parents and young people to understand the inherent risk that vaping can pose to both health and quality of life. And we have some very knowledgeable panelists here to discuss this topic and share some important information with us. And I also want to acknowledge our two sponsoring organizations, the American Heart Association and Guide, Gwinnett United in Drug Education. They are near and dear to my heart. Guide is a joint effort between the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education, who formed them back in 1986. And the goal then was to have a comprehensive, coordinated, and proactive approach to reducing and preventing substance use and abuse. Guide became an active partner with the Gwinnett Coalition for Health and Human Services when it began in 1991. And they have since collaborated on many initiatives to reduce smoking, use of inhalants, underage drinking, and addressing issues with marijuana use and misuse of prescription drugs. Our goal tonight is to raise awareness about vaping, especially by teenagers and its effects. Along the way, I hope we will highlight some of the excellent work being done here in Gwinnett to deal with this epidemic. As you may or may not know, I was a prevention advocate for several years before I became elected to the Board of Commissioners. So I know firsthand the effectiveness of communities coming together to develop strategies that promote healthy living and a good quality of life for all Gwinnett residents. And I've seen how local government agencies and community partners work together to help our residents thrive. Smoking in general has been a long health concern in Gwinnett County. In fact, we were one of the first to adopt a smoke-free air ordinance back in the early 2000s. Past initiatives have included smoke-free homes and tobacco-free babies. In 2003, the Board of Commissioners passed the Clean Indoor Air Ordinance that bans smoking in most workplaces and public places in unincorporated Gwinnett. Lindsay may speak a little bit more about this later, Lindsay Jorstad, but in our parks, it is a violation to use any form of tobacco, including e-cigarettes and smokeless tobacco, at county-owned or operated indoor or outdoor recreational facilities, including restrooms, athletic fields, beaches, aquatic areas, parks, walking, hiking trails, bodies of water, spectator and concession areas. We are constantly reviewing county ordinances to see if we need to update or modify them in any way to respond to changing circumstances. And finally, I'm very pleased to have the Live Healthy Gwinnett initiative up and running to promote and encourage active, healthy lifestyles for all Gwinnett residents. You'll be hearing from Lindsay, as I mentioned today, who will be sharing information on the county's efforts to achieve healthy lifestyles. And I'm so appreciative of all the work that she's done for the county. So with that, I hope you enjoy hearing from the panelists and the wealth of knowledge that they will be bringing forth this evening. Thank you again for inviting me to take part in this very important conversation. And now I'll turn it back to Michael Davis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. We're so excited to have you on the call today and to say that, and for a long time supporter of GUIDE and the initiatives, a long time connection from your time with the Gwinnett Coalition and GUIDE. So we're going to jump into this wonderful, wonderful event tonight, and we're excited. We have a great set of panelists for you tonight. And I'm going to give them time to introduce themselves. And let's start with Miss Laura Bracey from the American Heart Association.
Good evening. I am Laura Bracey. I am the Community Advocacy Director for the American Heart Association.
Excellent. Thank you. And Miss Laura Searcy.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for that wonderful support for all the substance use prevention work going on in your county. And again, I'm Laura Searcy. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner, and I have been working the last number of years in youth substance use and tobacco use prevention.
And we'll go on to Lindsay.
Good evening, Lindsay Jorstad. I'm one of the Deputy Department Directors for Gwinnett County's Department of Community Services, here tonight representing Parks and Recreation.
Jade, Dr. Jade.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Jade Gillespie. I'm one of the assistant principals at Central Gwinnett High School, responsible for our STEM and Medical Academy, as well as the discipline coordinator for our school.
Haley.
Hi guys, my name is Haley Manise, and I'm a college ambassador at Vaping Attention to Prevention, VA2P for short. And I am a student at UNG as well, University of North Georgia, and we just opened a VA2P chapter there.
And then we'll throw it over to Hannah last.
Hello everybody, my name is Hannah Manise, and I am a student at the University of North Georgia, and I am also a college ambassador for VA2P. I am very pleased to be serving as a youth advocate in our community and look forward to providing some insight into the mindsets of students who vape.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here and giving your time tonight. Again, if you have any questions as we get into this dialogue, please use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And as we have time, our panelists will love to answer your questions. But to start off, we got to know, we're here to talk about vaping. Vaping has been such a hot topic. And so we wanted to lay some foundation, some groundwork. So we're all on the same page getting started. And I really wanted to reach out to one of our experts in Georgia, that is Miss Laura Searcy, to give us some background of what are we actually talking about and what's going on. So I'm going to stop sharing my slide and allow Laura to share her side and give us a little bit of foundational work.
So what I wanted to do was give you guys all some background on why we're here and why we're talking about vaping. And our efforts to stop cigarette smoking and prevent cigarette smoking among youth was one of the great public health accomplishments of the 20th and 21st century. Then when the vaping products came on the scene in the mid 2014-15s, we kind of reversed that trend because vaping became very popular. So just for a start, what is vaping? And it's the act of inhaling and exhaling an aerosol produced by an electronic device. It's often perceived as a safer alternative to smoking, and it's age restricted to 21 nationally. Now, I have to say there is an adult conversation and a youth conversation about vaping. For an adult 3-pack-a-day smoker who's 65 years old, experiencing health consequences, there may be some benefit to that person going ahead and stopping smoking completely and moving to vaping. But that's a conversation between their healthcare provider and their self. And let me tell you that for youth, there is absolutely not a single safe effect of vaping. Vaping is always harmful for youth, for pregnant women, and the babies they're carrying. We have over 3.6 million youth that are using e-cigarettes in the United States. A noticeable uptick, and we're going to talk a little bit about the disposable products that have flooded the market lately. And I want you to be sure you realize that more than 8 out of 10 youth e-cigarette users use flavored e-cigarettes. There was some publicity a little bit ago about Juul was banned from the FDA and pulled a lot of their flavored products off the market. Juul's a pod-based product where you have refills, but there was a loophole in the flavor regulations that allowed disposable products to still be sold in every flavor under the sun. So our youth just switched products to a product that was more to their liking. The biggest problem that we have is among high school e-cigarette users. Almost 40% of them use e-cigarettes and vaping products frequently, and almost a quarter use them daily. These devices are very high in nicotine content. Kids get addicted to nicotine and other drugs more quickly and more easily than adults do because of their immature brains. So we have a very disturbing trend in kids who find themselves nicotine dependent without even realizing what happened. My Laura partner is going to go over a lot of the health effects of vaping, but I just want to focus on a few things. Because of the brain development that happens between the ages of 10 and 25, any use of nicotine or any other addictive drug during that time changes both the structure and the function of the teen brain. And nicotine in particular affects attention and memory, impulse control, and especially out of our COVID environment, it is linked to a worsening of mood disorders and mood disorder symptoms such as depression and anxiety. It does increase the risk of other substance use, and it is risk factor for both COVID-19 and an e-cigarette associated lung inflammation that put a lot of people in the hospital about a year ago. I'm very, very concerned in particular about the link to worsening depression and anxiety symptoms. The CDC just put out the study that during COVID, during the last year, emergency department visits for suspected suicide attempts among US girls aged 12 to 17 increased 50% during the pandemic. So when we have such an upswing of mental health issues and stress and anxiety that just dreadfully affected our children as during the COVID-19 pandemic, any use of any substance that can be even slightly linked to worsening depression and anxiety symptoms, I really need to discourage for all the health reasons of preventing tobacco use, but all these associated reasons as well. We do know that substance use is related, and kids who use cigarettes or vape or use tobacco are much more likely to use alcohol, binge drink, use marijuana, use other illicit drugs, including opioids. And going vape-free and smoke-free is especially important when you have a pandemic of a lung disease, because smoking or vaping cannabis or tobacco, and kids who vape tobacco are also 50% more likely than other kids to vape cannabis as well. It reduces the immune response in the lungs because those products do cause inflammation. Remember I said for a 65-year-old smoker who already has COPD, he may be harming himself less if he switches to vaping, but these products are not harmless and they do cause inflammation in the lungs. And then you have exposure to COVID-19 or any serious infection, you have increased risk of infection, increased risk of severe infections. You eliminate smoking or vaping, you reestablish the normal immune response in the lungs with less risk of exposure. So vaping products, just really quickly, I'm going to run through this, that we have an evolution of the products. The first ones introduced looked like cigarettes. Then there were vape pens that were disposable. You've seen people walking around with those big box mods, and then you had your pod-based. And here's some pictures. So one of the things that parents have told me over and over again is, you know, these things look so much like normal devices. How do I recognize them? So I'm just going to give you a quick picture journey through a lot of the products that are out there that look like anything but tobacco products. Here's some examples of some of the other brands that imitated Juul. Other devices that are slightly different design, but look like, don't resemble a cigar or cigarette or anything you would consider a product that you would use nicotine with. These are your flavored products that have flooded the market. And Puff Bar is one of the most common. They're available in fruit flavors, mint flavors, candy cane, dragon's blood, unicorn horn, you name it. And again, these are all kinds of flavors that are meant to attract kids, because the tobacco industry and the vaping industry has to have replacement users for the generation of folks that either have quit or at the end of their lifespan, sometimes that lifespan being severely limited by their tobacco use. You can buy skins, you can personalize them, you can create avatars online. There are vaping accessories, including sweatshirts with tubes that are actually hook into a pocket for your vaping device. Yes, that smartwatch also has a vape device you can pull out of it. Lipstick containers, backpacks, you name it. Now, why is this of a concern? Because one Juul pod is the equivalent of more than a pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine. A smoker lights up a cigarette and they half of it, not half of it, but a good bit of it, it goes up in smoke in the ashtray. And not every ounce of nicotine in that tobacco cigarette is inhaled. With these electronic products, every bit of that nicotine is inhaled and absorbed. And this gives you an idea of the nicotine equivalent in number of cigarettes smoked for some of the vaping products. And there's your pack of cigarettes. There's your Juul pod. And when Juul introduced its nicotine salt that it patented that enabled more nicotine to be concentrated in a small amount, it kind of set up an arms war, so to speak, among e-cigarette makers to see who could get the highest nicotine content out there. And yeah, you can see that there are some products on the market that one pod is as much as 90 cigarettes worth of nicotine. So, and what gets kids started? Advertising and use on TV and streaming and media, flavors. And here's just a quick example of how the vaping companies just co-opted the old tobacco smoking ads from the tough guy image, targeting minority communities, the selling the sexual attractiveness. There's on the bottom left, you have Juul's famous vaporized commercial, very much an updated version of the cool commercials from the 80s. So very specific advertising that kids see in multiple channels. Also on TV, streaming, media, social media. Believe it or not, Truth Initiative, which is a nonprofit that its aim is to create a nicotine-free generation, does surveys of a lot of shows. And for 3 years running now, Netflix show The Stranger Things topped the list with 4 times as many depictions of tobacco in its latest season compared to its first. And another show, HBO's Euphoria, which 400,000 youths aged 13 to 17 watched season 1 of that. And there were 67 incidences of e-cigarette use over the first 8 episodes. So flavors, I'll let this slide play for itself. Yes, chicken and waffles. Some of you that have seen me do my presentations in person know I actually have in my possession a chicken and waffle flavored little cigar. Over 15,000 flavors and counting. And the flavors are what kids prefer, and the flavors help hook them quickly. There is also a youth culture around vaping, and it is a youth culture. Again, kids want to do things that their parents don't know about and have a culture that their parents don't share, including vaping competitions. There are actually vape products out there that will blow out vapor in various colors all at once. And I'm going to show you a short video clip. This is from a European version of America's Got Talent. And I want you to watch the adult reaction to this young person's doing these vaping tricks, and also think, when he was practicing for this competition and went through all the different rounds of this competition, how much nicotine did this young man consume in his attempt to win? And I will leave you with that. I'll stop sharing my screen at this point. And I hope that has at least given you guys a little bit of an overview of the whole vaping phenomenon and things that are involved in it. And hopefully we'll get some good questions from folks later. But thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Michael. Oh, Michael, you're...
Thank you, Laura, for that ground setting for us and getting us all on page of why this is such an issue and why we're here tonight. So we know it's dangerous. You gave us all this thing. You showed us that talent, I guess what he thinks is a talent with the vape on that. But I want to know what's happening in our community. So what does it look like here in Gwinnett? What does it look like in our high schools? What are we seeing? And how do you know? So I will start with Haley and Hannah, whoever wants to go first. From your perspective, what do you see going on in your high school previously and now in your college?
I'll go first. So compared to Hannah, I recently just graduated from high school, so my experiences with vaping among high schoolers is still relatively fresh in my mind. So from what I've seen and experienced, most of my peers do not know of or choose not to listen to the health consequences that result from vaping juul products or e-cigarettes regularly. This may be due to social reasons such as peer pressure and the desire to fit into certain social groups, influences from familial struggles. So vaping can act as a coping mechanism for some individuals who struggle with anxiety and depression. Belief in misinformation, such as smoking e-cigarettes are safer than actual cigarettes. I hear that one a lot. Or just the attraction to the variety of flavors by some of these companies, which is just the marketing influence aspect of things. These are some of the primary reasons I think that most of my, that form most of my high school peers' perspectives about the dangers of vaping and why they may disregard the fact that it is dangerous to use regularly. In terms of like obtaining these products, it varies state to state because of the extent to which the jurisdiction in that state strictly enforces prohibiting these products to minors. Even though Georgia has a law that rose the minimum age to 21 to purchase tobacco products, the youth still obtain these products through friends borrowing the product from somebody else and online purchases. Most companies do not have an adequate age verification except when you enter the site, making it extremely easy for people under 18 years old to purchase these products.
Okay, and I'll continue with the college aspect. On our college campuses, we are witnessing the continuation of the vaping epidemic in our classrooms, dorms, and outside. These young adults of whom became addicted to nicotine in high school are wildly unaware of the dangers we're now seeing from vaping. The attitude among students seems to be ignorance due to the lack of education and misinformation being stirred up by their peers and big tobacco companies. With the legal age to buy vaping products being 21, it is a bit more difficult to address college students. A lot of these students became addicted in high school when products like Juul became extremely popular. And I remember smelling the fruity scents in the hallways and the bathrooms, and can recall a friend saying it's only water vapor. So I think there's this perception that they think it's harmless. And students see it as a trendy thing to do now, especially at parties. They can just pass the vapes around. And I think that they're most likely getting their supplies from stores near campus and their friends. There is a black market of sorts where people will buy and sell pods. And furthermore, there is a disconnect between young adults actually listening to teachers and administrators warn about unhealthy activities such as drugs and alcohol. But I think they respond more to their peers, guiding and educating them about the detrimental effects of vaping. And we've seen a rise in people who want to take initiative against vaping, especially with my sister and I's club at UNG.
Excellent. Thank y'all so much for laying that groundwork. And if you think Gwinnett County has over 20 high schools in the county and 2 college and technical college that really has dealing with it here in Gwinnett as well. So thank you. Lindsay, from your perspective, what are you seeing that's happening in our community?
Sure. So from the community perspective and what we see happening in our parks is that the vaping epidemic knows no bounds. Parks being the greatest social denominators available for anyone to use sometimes do showcase these unwelcome behaviors like the use of e-cigarettes. Spaces for gathering, connections with nature, and the ability to socialize is a part of the park's mission, but sometimes we do observe our young residents making questionable choices towards their health. We have the ability, much like tonight's conversation, to leverage these public spaces with community partners to educate about healthy experiences that should be promoted versus partaking in unhealthy and risky behaviors. An example being the county's health initiative that Chairwoman Hendrickson mentioned before in her welcome, Live Healthy Gwinnett. In collaboration with an array of partners, takes a proactive approach to wellness, encouraging our residents to be active, eat healthy, get checked, and be positive. Currently, Live Healthy Gwinnett has a campaign in partnership with many on tonight's call, encouraging everyone to be active in their tobacco-free parks, which I'll talk about a little more further into the program. Parks aid in the safety and well-being of residents, for which we must advocate along with our public health professionals to recognize vaping happening in our community, respond efficiently with proactive resources, and reinforce guidelines to set to protect youth so they can continue to thrive.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight. And Dr. Jade, with Dr. Gillespie and your work in your school, what are you seeing from an administrator side?
It's really interesting to hear all of the comments mentioned by our panelists, because they're right on target in terms of young people and feeling that peer pressure, and them having recently, starting to come up out of the whole COVID response. But to everything that has been mentioned, it is important, I think, for young people to know that there's that peer-to-peer help and association. That's who's really going to be able to spread the message and who they're going to listen to. So we are privileged at Central Gwinnett to be able to have our HOSA led program by our students, which our health organization where they do a lot of just peer one-to-one education about vaping. We have different mannequins and products and all different type of accessibilities for them to be able to show one another what healthy lungs look like, what damaged lungs look like. And so it's that peer coming together, the students talking, and just having some open dialogue about the fact that it's not just flavored water, but you would be surprised the different flavors that, you know, are out. Again, over the 15,000. It's amazing how the colorization of even the products themselves and how they are marketed really is what is drawing young people. We've got to be that much more proactive, because even in the high school, then there's that influence into the middle schools and so forth, where then the younger begin to think that this is the cool thing, this is the in thing to do. So all of these different avenues to be able to help young people just talk and have the open dialogue, we're seeing everything across the board as well in the high schools.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Gillespie, for kind of that insight. And you kind of led us right into our next question. And I'm going to go back to Laura Searcy on that, because Laura, you started talking about this, the way you can personalize, and Dr. Gillespie added on to that of the personalization factor and the flavor factors and how that contributes. So I want to know, this is changing, and for a parent, how do you know what to look for? What do you need to look for if you have a youth in high school or in middle school right now? What advice do you have for us?
I think it's a matter of talking to your children and talking to them early and often. The vaping phenomenon is very much starting to follow what used to be the trajectory for initiation of cigarette smoking. And if you ask a lifeline cigarette smoker when they started smoking, they'll tell you 10, 11, 12, sometimes 9. Talking there, it's a lot of parents are afraid to broach subjects with children and knowing how to talk to kids. It's not like, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about vaping, because I don't ever want you to do that. If your parents did that when you were a kid, what you would like, oh yeah, all right, But it's just a matter of, having their confidence and having that open and honest communication and be able to talk to them about, hey, what are you seeing happening in school? What are you seeing happen in the community? What are you seeing with your friends? Do you have any questions about anything? So let's talk about this, because kids need facts, not fear. Another thing, prevention is a science. And as we study, we know what works and what doesn't work. And I see Michael shaking his head big time here. And I'll give you an example. How many of you remember before homecoming or before prom, when the crashed, crumpled car got towed onto the lawn? And that was supposed to convince you that drinking and driving was dangerous. Did it have any effect on drinking behavior among kids at prom time? Probably not, because we know those scare tactics don't work. Kids respond to honesty, they respond to facts, they respond to adults wanting their opinions, and they respond to their pocketbooks. And the distrust of predatory industries. So, it's like, do you really want a company to have their hand in your wallet, siphoning dollars out of it for the rest of your life? And I've seen posters, I think Forsyth County, you've probably seen these up there, Haley, I think they're great. But they put that in terms of, if you were going through 1 Juul pod a day for a month, here's what you could buy. For a year, here's what you've got. It could go from Music Midtown tickets to, you get on out in years, you got a semester of college. So those things really helped. And I do have a little bit of a, if I can share my screen again, just a little thing for parents to help you figure out what I might want to play that again. This is called Hidden in Plain Sight. And so for our little audience participation here, there are a number of vaping devices in this picture. And again, these vaping devices they're stealth by design on purpose, because kids want to be able to get away with doing things that their teachers and their adults don't even know what they're doing. So I will tell you that there are 6 vaping devices or accessories in this slide, and I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds or so to find them, and then we'll give you the answers. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds. All right, and here are the answers. I'm going to start at the bottom at about 7 o'clock. That's a Stig, which is kind of like a Juul lookalike, but again, looks very much like the USB thumb drive that's next to it. To the right of the Scotch tape dispenser, that is actually a Juul device. Above that, that yellow looks like a lip gloss or a highlighter is a Swarin, one of the other more popular devices. In amongst the pen and pencils, there are some vape pens there. By the way, if you find any kind of a pen-like looking device that has a hole on each end, that's kind of a giveaway. In the tray there is a Juul refill. So I hope that kind of illustration has been a little helpful for you. And with that, I will turn it back to Michael.
I've seen that before, and I still get to about 5. And I'm like, where is that 6th one? I can't find it. Like, it is a tricky 6th one there. So I feel you on as parents and anyone that's trying to say, what is this? It could be complicated, but you're not alone. And I think just to add on what you said and what Dr. Gillespie said, and Haley and Hannah, the peer-to-peer part is going to be so huge in this movement of just educating and leading by facts. And I saw that Marty, I know I'm stealing Mary Kate's thunder here, Marty asked about, is there any guides for parents to have this? And yes, I will see my friend Aspen Brown, who's an intern for Guide right now that works with me, is working on conversation cards about all kinds of different alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, vaping for parents. And they're guided conversation cards that give parents facts and then prompts to like get into there. So be on the lookout for a guide to put out those cards, and it's going over all kinds of alcohol, tobacco, vaping, distracted driving. We're doing all kinds of health behaviors that we want to give those conversation cards to parents. So keep checking back with us, and we're in the part of doing that too. And I see Dr. Gillespie, you raised your hand.
Yes, I was just going to remind parents, aside from just looking for the physical, parents also be mindful of those changes, change in dress, change in action, change in eating, sleeping, the whole behavior, new friends, their grades dropping, all of those whole pieces. It's one thing to look for the physical, but also don't forget those subtle changes that add up. That's telling you that there's a flag someplace.
Yeah. I think that's great. Thank you, Dr. Gillespie. And that kind of leads us to our next question to Laura Bracey. We're talking about some of those behaviors and the physical changes and things like that, and the way that the vaping epidemic has exacerbated. Even Laura seriously talked about the COVID exacerbation that came with the vaping and other health concerns. Can you give us more about the impacts on vaping on teens' health?
Sure. So the interesting thing is that youth who are vaping right now are basically guinea pigs. Vaping has not been around for very long, so the long-term effects of vaping are really not well known and need to be studied. So the youth who are vaping right now are the guinea pigs for the data that in 10 years I will be able to share with you, and that is what is so sad. But we do know that most e-cigarettes, about 90% of the e-cigarettes that are purchased contain nicotine, and nicotine is highly addictive. As Laura Searcy talked a little bit about, it can damage developing young brains. We know that. We also know that all tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, irritate the lungs and damage the heart. So those are the things that we know. And Laura Searcy talked a little bit about this, that there was an uptick of serious lung injuries starting about 2019. So we do know some scary things that are happening, but I think the thing just to drive home is that youth are truly our guinea pigs. And that is what we should be really fired up and upset about this. I don't want to be reporting data on our sweet Gwinnetians who are in our high schools now in 10 years.
Yes, absolutely. And I think some of those things that Dr. Gillespie talked about just shows it the physical signs of what can manifest within teens when they're doing with the addiction and the withdrawals and the physical injuries that are happening or damages that's happening. So thank you for giving us a little insight on that. So we know that this all can be pretty scary. We've heard a lot this afternoon. So I want to know from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge in addressing this issue? And I'll start with Hannah this time. What do you see as the biggest challenge about addressing vaping with our teens and college students?
Okay, so I believe the biggest challenge is instigating enough motivation for students to listen to what we are espousing and then take actions to stop vaping. Teenagers are rebellious in nature and are not likely to listen to authority telling them not to do something. However, if we can get a general consensus of other students' understanding and start to educate their peers, then we can create a dent in these growing percentages of users. There is a positive response of people who will start seriously thinking about their actions if it is coming from a friend or fellow peer. I think we should begin creating student-led talks about vaping more popular at schools. It's more personal and relatable coming from an individual of a similar age and background, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
Haley, do you want to add on to that from your perspective?
Yeah, so as my sister said, I think the most effective method in changing youth perspectives about vaping is to have people their age or a few years older talk about why it's important to begin the process of quitting to vape. I think it's important to emphasize that there are cessation techniques that can be utilized to make the transition easier, because making an offer like it's all or nothing, vaping or no vaping, seems daunting to some individuals. So making it appear that it's doable to quit vaping and worth their time is essential to this approach. Ultimately, I think with these factors combined, this could be one of various effective approaches to this matter.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Gillespie, from your perspective, what's the biggest challenge you think we have?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we probably see in the school system is the accessibility. There are smoke shops that are in walking distance of, a lot of our schools, and that's something that we have to become proactive as an entire community to really spread the word and the message, how impressionable our young people are, but even, how easy it is for them to be in such near proximity of the glamorization of what these products look like. That continues to be a challenge. We can educate, we can have the right student leadership and the peers share and give that information, but I think coming together as a community, we've got to continue to let all of those facets be a part of this awareness approach that the accessibility has got to go. If we can get rid of those and the ones that can get their hands on them easy, then that will help us in this fight against vaping.
Excellent, thank you. And Lindsay, from your experience kind of in the government realm and expert in our community, with our parks, what do you see as the biggest challenge?
Sure. So I would say a big challenge to addressing youth vaping is recognizing that this issue is part of some of our most critical health and social challenges. being the equivalent of substance use, increased mental health conditions, food insecurity, equitable access to healthcare. That's all roped in together to be at the same level. Dr. Gillespie, you really hit it on the nail here of that built environment being a challenge. The common presence of a vape or smoke shop in many shopping complexes across our community can result in easy access and availability of these products. When I asked our team of young professionals and student interns, they noted, just as Haley and Laura have stated before, that the products are discreet, leaving no smell like traditional cigarettes, vapors disappearing instantly, appeal of the flavors looking high tech, and the misconception of them being less harmful to their health can entice that younger generation to partake. Those steps, like noted before in question 1, have been taken here in Georgia to raise that access age of 21. The brands do counter with low-cost options, making them attainable to youth and the youth budget. I would finally add the importance to be placed on retailers, much like we do for those who sell alcohol, to provide education and ensure that they adhere to the law of not selling to anyone underage.
Thank you all. I think you all hit it on the head, all of you, from the education to the helping quitting if you're already addicted, because maybe you started not realizing there's nicotine and there's addiction there, to the retail, the social availability, the retail availability and access. Seems like there's a lot of things that are challenging to tackle this issue, but I've lived in Gwinnett my whole life. I went away for a short stint for college, but I'm from Gwinnett, graduated from Beaufort High School from Beaufort, and I know, and what I love about Gwinnett is that we're proactive. We're a proactive county. We see an issue and we want to keep our citizens healthy and safe. And just look at our parks that you're representing today, Lindsay, of how wonderful they are and spread out across our county. And just when I take people around and show them all the parks, they're like, I wish my county had this. So what is Gwinnett doing? How are we already addressing this issue? And kind of give us that.
Sure. So Chairwoman Hendrickson already noted a few early on priorities that the board had taken advantage on, including that 2003 passing of the Clean Indoor Air Act ordinance. I'm excited to report that as of October 2020, the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners accepted the recommendation by our Recreation Authority Board to the park ordinance with a change to a tobacco-free park system. This is huge for Gwinnett County and is in a system nationally recognized for our amenities, our assets, our public experiences. This is the next great step. This tobacco-free policy restricts the use of any product that contains tobacco or nicotine within a county park site, no matter where you are. Previously, we had smoke-free areas of play, noting playgrounds, athletic complexes, skate parks, dog parks as being those pocket smoke-free zones. But with the passing of this new tobacco-free ordinance, it blanket covers the entire park property. The establishment and maintenance of a tobacco-free system is an effort to recognize our growing responsibility in promoting a healthy community. This will help in protecting the health of our workforce, park users, and the environment. Gwinnett's parks and outdoor public spaces act as that relaxing refuge for all. For many of those outdoor spaces may be the only ones available for people to be in touch with nature and enjoy clean, fresh air. And finally, our tobacco-free park system is a step towards stewardship of our community health, public lands, and our environmental assets in the county. So we are looking forward to setting that standard. We watched and talked to many of our benchmarking agencies and park and rec organizations to see how they take steps into the tobacco-free policies themselves. And we're hoping to put this across the board for the state of Georgia and get more agencies on the same ordinance and same guidelines.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that kind of gets us to our next question of what solutions will have the biggest impact? It seems like Gwinnett's starting down this path with our parks and doing a huge impact. on the quality of our parks and the quality of experience in our park. But what are the big greatest impacts we can do? And Laura Searcy, let's start with you. And do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I think in our Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition in our county, we kind of have a buzzword that what we really have is an adult problem with youth consequences. And I think we have to educate the entire community, because kids can't obtain alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, etc., unless an adult provides it to them, or at least looks the other way and minimizes the risk. So we need to have a good deal of education to the entire community that for young people whose precious brains are developing, and we want our kids to be all that they can be, that they have one choice to make, and that's to be substance free, that there are no harmless substances. You know, we have a generation of parents that kind of categorize drugs into soft drugs and hard drugs. Well, we know there's really no distinction as far as how they affect a growing youth brain. And I think my partner, Laura, is going to talk about a lot of the policies that are within the control of counties. I've heard from Lindsay and Dr. Gillespie about the location of vape shops in proximity to schools. Well, we can't have alcohol outlets next to schools, but we never thought about all the vape shops because they didn't exist 20 years ago. So, and no ordinance or policies are effective unless they're enforced and people understand they're being enforced. So I think it's a combination of education, good policy, enforcement, and getting our young folks partnered in there to do the effective peer-to-peer prevention, because peers are who kids listen to. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you, Laura Searcy. Because yes, there are 3 policies that the American Heart Association advocates for, because we know that they can stop tobacco use, including e-cigarette use. The first is the flavor ban. As Laura Searcy mentioned, 8 out of 10 youth are using flavored e-cigarette products. So a flavor ban would be the elimination of all flavored tobacco products. The second policy that we advocate for is the tobacco tax. Now that's more on the state level, but we know that a tobacco tax that includes all tobacco products, e-cigarettes being one, we know that that is one of the most effective ways to reduce tobacco use. And the third, which has been mentioned a couple of times tonight, is having a comprehensive smoke-free law that includes e-cigarettes. Comprehensive means that all indoor spaces are smoke and aerosol free. It's actually not vapor that comes out of an e-cigarette, it's aerosol. So smoke and aerosol free. Now, how we normally frame this around everyone deserves a smoke-free or a aerosol-free workplace. But with youth, I wanted to share some research that's out of the British Medical Journal. They found that students that live within jurisdictions that have really strong smoke-free laws were more likely to perceive e-cigarettes as harmful. So if they're not seeing people vaping in public spaces, which right now there is, when it does have a smoke-free law, again, it does not include e-cigarettes. So if youth are not seeing people vaping, they are perceiving it as more harmful. Or if you have to vape outside, there must be a harm with that product. So we are advocating for Gwinnett to strengthen their smoke-free ordinance, and would love to have you join us. And you can do that, and I'll put it in the chat box by texting Gwinnett to 46839. And I'll put that in the chat box as well. So thanks, Michael.
Excellent, thank you. So we're about to go on to your questions, but we understand we're coming up on that hour mark. So we really want you you can either use your phone to scan the QR to fill out our evaluation. That will also be how you get a certificate of attendance. And we will also send an email just thanking you and everything with that, along with that. So please scan that so you can get that certificate of attendance and give us feedback on this. Mary Kate, do we have 1 or 2 questions that we can toss out to the group?
We do. The first question we have here is there a smell or odor that vaping produces. It's easy to recognize the smell of marijuana or cigarettes, and that comes from Jeffrey Strickland.
Excellent. And I think maybe Laura Searcy might be one of the best people to ask that question to.
Sure, and that's one of the discreetness and the stealth by design of these products. They don't smell like, you know, when a kid used to go out and smoke a cigarette, you could smell them a mile away when they came in the door. And the vaping products don't have that. You may get a little bit of a fruity flavor or minty flavor that easily disperses. The marijuana vapes also don't have as much of a distinctive odor as smoking a marijuana joint. So that's part of what makes these products easy to use and in places that combustible products would never be able to be used without everybody knowing it.
Excellent, thank you. Mary Kate, next question, please.
All right, the next one that we have here are there some cultures that are more vulnerable to vaping, to your knowledge?
So I would turn that over, Laura, either of the Lauras. Do you know?
And I'm seeing something. Does Jessica from Guide would like to answer that? I saw that.
I'm sorry, I am Jessica from Guide.
You are Jessica from Guide. I'm sorry. Well, yeah. Seriously, let me tell you, there has been a long history of the tobacco industry being very predatory and targeting specific populations, targeting women, targeting minority communities. One of the things I got to do before COVID shut us down, I was doing some statewide training and technical assistance. When I was down in low-income communities in the south part of their state, I would go into convenience stores and you could buy little flavored cigars for $1. 4 for $1 in heavily minority, heavily poverty communities. The whole idea, the FDA has just announced it's going to begin a process to consider banning menthol. Most of the African-American community that smokes, 80% of those folks smoke menthol products. Menthol products are notoriously difficult to quit smoking. And so that is an example of heavily marketed to a community that then has a great deal of difficulty and suffers a great deal of harm from it. So and obviously targeting youth. These are the replacement customers for the next generation. So the industry targets folks all the time, and one of the things that we can do is call them out on it when we see it and try to get our policymakers to put into place policies that prevent that predatory marketing and targeting.
Excellent, thank you so much. We don't have time for another question. We will look at that, but I think, Kira, your question will be answered in this next question. Regina, I've talked a little bit about this, that we're starting, Guide is developing conversation cards for parents to use with youth or for adults to use with youth. So keep in touch with Guide and we'll be glad to do that as well. But kind of this next question is, what are our next steps? And so I'm gonna toss this to Haley or Hannah, whoever wants to tell us about what youth or parents, how could get involved with vaping attention to prevention.
Okay, I'll go. So I think that we need to create programs in schools that not only enforce the prevention of tobacco usage on school premises, but educate students on the health consequences of vaping. This educator does not need to be an expert, but a relatable individual who understands what it's like to live in this generation to be more effective in getting the point across to young audiences.
Excellent. And vaping attention to prevention, as Hannah and Haley said, they started their club. So it's youth started and they found out from their parent, their mom, and what they could do. So if you are interested in starting a club and getting a club at your school with your kids, visit Vaping Attention to Prevention's website, and we can provide that in there as well. And if either one of y'all have that, you can put it in the chat box for people to see on that. And the last thing of what to do, Laura, do you want to, we may not be able to get it outlawed. I know that was a question of how do we get vaping outlawed, but we can change some of the policy. And Laura, do you want to give us a reminder of how we can get involved in that campaign here in Gwinnett?
Yes, just text Gwinnett to 46839 and we will get you plugged in with the American Heart Association.
So they're working on it, and we plan to be out in the community more to educate more on that. And I know there was another question from Jimmy asking, how do you get your certificate? You scan that QR code, or you go to bit.ly.com or bit.ly/novape2021. Fill out that survey for us, and there's a part to put in your email address, and you will automatically email out your certificate. First, I want to thank everyone for being here today, all of our panelists. You did an amazing job, and if you're on attendee and you want to put in there, the panelists can see your comments to them. So thank you all, Laura, Bracy, Laura, Circe, Dr. Gillespie, Lindsay, and Haley and Hannah for taking time tonight to share your wealth of knowledge and expertise on this subject with us. So with that, if you have any questions, any follow-up, please feel free to reach out to us. I will put my email in the box, but also I believe it was on your invite. So michael@guiding.org, and we'll get you connected, and text that that number to get involved with Smoke Free Gwinnett. Thank you all, and good night.